syndrome until so yes, I didn't find out about my condition about Usher syndrome until when I was in college. So it's basically I found out through my brother, because I have two brothers. My youngest brother, he has also have Usher syndrome, and they did eye tests on me as well. So that way, I found out my condition through my younger brother, because they did not find out about this condition when I was born. So when I went to college, of course, I didn't feel confident to talk about Usher syndrome, because I felt quite shy, feel a bit embarrassed to talk about my condition. But once I went to university, I want to accept myself, and just to basically accept myself and just go through the challenges as well. But yes, so at university, all my friends, they knew about my condition, and they're all very supporting, very understandable that way I'm very struggling, and they don't actually mind way to help out. But the only struggling is that I'm struggling to see at night time, but whereas I'm doing all right, thanks.
Just one question. You mentioned there was a change for you, whereas in school you didn't feel comfortable talking about it, and then at university that changed. Was there anything that happened that made that difference for you?
Yes, so when I was in secondary through college, I didn't have any friends because I didn't have much confidence. But as much I realized that because I didn't have friends and I didn't want to waste so many years at university. So at university, it's more like an independent lifestyle. So you make incredible friends throughout university, and you have a major impact on your life. That way you can grow your confidence, and where you can ability to accept yourself. But of course, I understand the kids, and they feel have low self-esteem, and felt so had a low self-esteem to talk about the condition about Usher syndrome at secondary school. But yes, I encourage the kids to improve their confidence and basically to step out.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. Thank you for telling us about that. And when you were in university, was there anything that helped you in terms of accessing the information that you needed there, or accessing the social things that you wanted to do? What worked for you?
In terms of Usher syndrome, or?
I guess in terms of Usher syndrome, yeah.
Yeah, so yes, what I found out is because as I'm aware, when I had a course and for outside university, you have this social life, and so I tried to find out more about details about like Usher syndrome. But sometimes you can feel that when you research, and there's some things are worrying about the future, and sometimes it gets to when you get to research about Usher syndrome, and this may happen in the future, and this will happen, and this will happen, and it would give you so many negative thoughts. But my parents are always encouraging me to basically forget about what's going to happen in the future and look at what's happening at the present, and it actually helps me a lot. So because I will be thinking about, oh my God, what's happening in 10 years or 20 years time, but you don't know what's going to happen anyway, and what you can do the best, try to best to live in your present, because this make your life worth living. And I didn't want any, because of course there's limitations and disadvantages about what people are trying to live, and negative thoughts about Usher syndrome. They are limited that we cannot do about in terms of career, in terms of the course. And so it is that I didn't want the disability to stop what you can do achieving from your dreams.
That's really good to hear. Thanks, Qais. Just to ask you where that university and where you are now, if you could let people know what you're doing now.
Yes, so I was studying in furniture. I was studying in furniture and product design at my university. So I graduated and I become as a 3D creative designer. So I'm working on the computing. So I design 3D models on the software, and my manager and my colleagues are very aware of my condition and they're very supportive. So sometimes I'm using my computer and sometimes I'm not aware of the things, and sometimes they can mention my name. They call my name or just tap me, but very helpful, very supportive. But I didn't want, if for example, if you were in that situation and you're worrying about the aware of the surroundings, not to be afraid, because you just have to be aware and tell people how you feel, and I'm sure that people are very helpful. So yes, but otherwise, if you don't tell them, how would they know? But I'm sure they will be very helpful in a way.
That's really great. Thank you, Qais, for that experience. Holly, if you'd be happy to just share, starting with when you found out about Usher syndrome and then how you found it as you got older, please.
Yeah, so hi, my name's Charlie Denton. I'm 15 from Gloucestershire. So I was originally born mildly deaf in one ear and fine in the other ear. And then I was about 2.5 when the doctors told my parents I won't be able to hear even with an aeroplane taken off right next to me. And then I was finally implanted at 3.5 years old. So I think mum and dad originally found out my Usher syndrome diagnosis after the operation on the wait to get the implant switched on. I have Usher syndrome type 1B. And then I think sort of the idea that I really had Usher syndrome came from when they went on walks or something, whenever there was sunlight, I would just start crying. I would just refuse to look. I just had to cover my eyes. I couldn't bear it with anything. And then, so that's sort of, and they started, and then they kept coming across Usher syndrome. But then I was very quick to walk. And then, so the doctors then still didn't really believe that I had Usher syndrome. And then, and then I was finally diagnosed. I think I originally first sort of understood about my diagnosis was I Googled myself, and there was a few newspaper articles on me, and then it did have Usher syndrome. And I think what was also quite hard was that I had been mentioned it before, but as a kid, you didn't really take it in, you didn't really understand what it was. But then there was one article that I still remember, and it was help me hear before I go blind. And that was quite a big one, just because then, and I think I went to Moorfields appointments sort of every 6 months, and they would, every time they'd sort of take eye scans, they'd point to me where my RP was. I was probably around 10 years old when they said to me personally, they took me in a room and said, you do have Usher syndrome. And then, that's when they pointed out all the IP at the edge of the eyes. And then school-wise, I've been at mainstream schools my entire life. I think I went to quite a small primary school, but I had one support teacher that went with me every lesson. So when I went to class 2, she'd come. When I went to class 3, she'd come with me. And then she left when I left. And then, so that was good. I used to radio aid in primary school. I mean, I've never really been too much of a fan of it. I went to my local grammar school, and I'm currently in year 10 right now. In my healthcare plan, I asked to sit at the front. However, I actually, what was this? So I asked to sit in the front, but I don't use a radio aid. So I just prefer just to sit at the front, just because I find I hear enough then. And then so basically I also find having AEN support, make sure there's really good support there, because there have been times such as a ball got booted, hit me right in the face, I got a concussion, my glasses broke. I then always, whenever a problem like that happens, I always go and see the TAs and support, because they're really nice, and they got my glasses, sellotape them, make sure I was all right, and then hesitantly let me go back to lessons. Yeah, I think just make sure that the TA support are there and will help you. And yeah, so my aim really is just to go to Loughborough, it's probably like a sports business sort of career. I'm also currently doing GCSE music, so I'm working with teachers to try and help me like identify the different notes, because especially you get like the brass and the woodwind, they're all fairly similar, so then identifying each other one like that.
That's brilliant. It sounds like you've got great support in place. Is there anything that helps you with your friends, you know, that you've found as a way to make sure that you're included, or people understand about some of the difficult situations for you?
Yeah, I think personally, so yeah, it's hard, like no one really knows about my condition. They just think I work, well, some people, because they know that I have some sort of condition, and because with my deaf, they think I'm just blind or something like that. But then, yeah, but it's mainly just, I think they're fine with it. I mean, it doesn't really impact the way that I go on with everyday life. No one then tries and come up to me, and then they just act normal around me as they do with any other person.
Yeah, and it sounds that's what you like.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Charlie. That's great. So I'm going to ask a few questions to each of you, and then we'll open up to see questions from the audience. So, Qais, if I can come back to you, I wanted to know if you can think of one thing that you've learned through your experience that you wish you'd known sooner or learned earlier.
Could you just repeat that? Sorry.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, what's one thing that you've learned through your experience that perhaps you wish you'd learned earlier on?
Self-esteem. That's definitely self-esteem. It's where you, because as far as I can remember, that when I was in secondary school, I used to be a very shy kid, and I didn't want to talk to anyone just because of my deafness, not because of the Usher syndrome, just because of my deafness. And so I used to be embarrassed, and I didn't want to make any friends. And because I did have support, and I had the microphone everywhere, and I used to be like quite embarrassed for showing a microphone or showing a cochlear implants to everyone. But as I wish I could tell myself earlier that I could accept myself, and then basically just step up and to improve your confidence in front of people who are asking you questions. But yes, self-esteem, it's the main thing. But what it makes a lot of difference that my parents and my family, they always have encouraged me to basically encourage me to study hard, and you will achieve better. You basically make friends. But that makes a huge difference with my parents and teacher of deaf in secondary school. But yeah.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Qais. And I've met your parents, and I've sensed from a distance their belief in you, even before I'd spoken to them. So yeah, I can fully imagine that positivity.
Yeah, and that's basically what I've advised to those parents who have a child with Usher syndrome, that as I'm aware that of course parents are worrying about what's going to happen in the future, but you don't know what's going to happen. Maybe it will not happen, and of course everyone experiences in different ways. But of course, like I mentioned earlier, there are limitations, there are disadvantages, advantages, and you just keep worrying about yourself. But all I can say, just try keep positive, and please encourage your kids, basically improve your confidence, and maybe like in terms of a social life, get them involved with the clubs, and to improve their confidence, and so can they ability to achieve their future better in a way.
Thank you, Qais. That's really helpful. Thank you. Charlie, can you think of one thing, I wonder, or anything that you wish you'd learned earlier?
Yeah, well, I think the main thing for me was just that blindness doesn't mean blackness, and just doesn't mean that it's just empty. So I think when I was told that I was going to be maybe considered blind, I thought suddenly I would just not be able to see a thing, and I didn't fully know about the tunnel vision. And the main other thing is you can basically do everything. I mean, I do football 2 times a week, where I just got to wear a scrum hat to protect the implants, and that's allowed. I do tennis 4 times a week, and sometimes 5 times a week if I'm doing tournaments. I think, yeah. So, but other than rugby, you can pretty much do any sport, anything. I mean, the doctors told my parents, because my parents are both professional musicians. Basically, my whole family's got something to do with music. And I mean, I've managed to get myself grade 7 in piano, grade 6 in violin, viola. Also, I played loads of instruments, and I've been able to do all of them. And I mean, it doesn't, basically, Usher syndrome doesn't stop you from doing anything.
Thanks, Charlie. I think we can call it a day after that question. My heart's just grown about 3 sizes. It's brilliant hearing from you. One final question from me, and then we'll hand over to see our audience. If I start back with you, Qais, about a challenge that you might want to share, but then also if you have a celebration, something that's meaningful for you that you want to share with everyone.
Yes, when I was at university, of course, I mentioned it was like an independence lifestyle. But when I was at university, I wanted to go to gym or to the cafe, and of course, in the winters times, they are quite, because the United States quite a dark, very early anyway. Yes, most of my friends, they invited me to go to restaurants or the cafe, but yeah, or basically go to the gym. So when I was walking at night, I feel confident walking alone, because I'm looking my own way and nothing to worry about anything else. But I'm not using a cane or anything, because I feel confident using without the cane. But if I walk with my friend along me, that sometimes I get a little bit losing on my balance. But if I wouldn't, I use the mini mic as well. So I use the mini mic. Basically, I just use the mini mic on my friends, so I don't have to worry about him or looking at his lip reading. So I watch my own way while listening to my friend while I was having a conversation. So of course my friends understand me very well. But yes, always look your own way. And of course, when you go to the cafe or restaurants, sometimes they're really like low lighting, but sometimes I ask them to increase the lighting, or maybe, but it's basically trying to find solutions where you are in that environment. But yeah.
Qais, did you want to say something?
Yes, I just consider myself, because while I was at John, we mainly use for sign language. But since I went to secondary school, I used to have a speech therapist weekly to improve my communication, so that would be benefit for the future when I apply for jobs, interviews, or making friends. But meanwhile, I use the sign language when I needed to do, or someone who are partially deaf or profoundly deaf, so I can be to the sign language with them.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Pam. Sorry, Chloe, I just wanted to add that, we are looking for volunteers to join us on calls in the future that primarily use ASL. Holly, we'd love to have your son next time we have a panel. We do try to put it out there, and we reach out to the coalition, and we appreciate all the volunteers who come on and share their story. So we will keep trying for that, and we'll continue to have the people we have today, ones we've had in the past, and hopefully new role models who will join us and share their story.
Thank you, Pam. We hear about that. That's great. So a practical question about feeling tired at the end of the day. I wonder if any of you can relate to that, and has found anything that works, particularly after a grueling day at college, doing A-levels, for example, or at school or at work. Charlie.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, yeah, downtime is definitely very important, just so you can have time so you can just sit down and just relax with yourself. And then if you always need to take your implants out and just go back sort of into your own one, just properly just get to be by yourself. I saw a comment saying about how the radio aid, there is the fact that so if they have it like connected around their waist, what it could be is that the sound will go straight into their implants, and I always found it's quite loud, it's quite overwhelming, especially when you first use it, and it's quite hard to get used to. And then it tends to be that you hear like 80% of the mic of the teacher and then 20% of your classmates. You can't really talk to your classmates and properly hear. But then also what's sometimes quite hard is if it's like around, if it's dangling around or anything like that, you actually get feedback from it rubbing on the teacher's clothes or whatever. So you sometimes get these horrible just feedback noise or something like that. So that might be what's a little bit upsetting for them.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Charlie. Qais, any comment on the fatigue or the tiredness?
Fatigue, sorry.
Yeah, the tiredness, just anything you found helps you if you're feeling really tired at the end of a day of listening and
Yeah, of course, yes. Because of course I grew up with a big family, and everyone speaks in a different language. And sometimes I'm in a one room with many people in a big room, and unfortunately sometimes I just gets overwhelmed. And when people are talking at the same time, I get really, oh, who's talking, and plus especially there are so many little kids there as well, so I have to look down and where the kids are, otherwise I would be bummed over it. So it gets really overwhelmed, but I always have to find a way to make my life easier, find just telling people, get out of the way.
that would work. Yeah.
Yes.
And out of interest, do you know to speak those languages? Do you have access to other languages?
And no, so I only access to English and BSL, but mainly English because most of my family they speak Urdu, which is in different language, but I don't speak Urdu. So yes, sometimes I ask people for translation. Every time I go to travel to Pakistan, but yeah.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
Just sorry, do you mind if I just quickly add? I think definitely just giving them, because I know when I first had to go to Moorfields Eye Hospital, Mum just occasionally said to me, sometimes people who are deaf do have slight problems with their eyes and just need to get it checked up. And then I think they were sort of, like you said, they're starting to sort of get the information into me. And then I think the sometime where I suddenly they were sort of getting near telling me and like properly sitting me down to tell me what was going to happen. And then I was pointed it out by the hospital, and then I looked myself online. So then that all just came in, and then I didn't know what was happening, because I knew that I may have something, but I didn't know that I was suddenly just going to go blind. And I thought blind just I was suddenly just going to completely just lose all sight suddenly. I didn't know when.
Yeah, I do agree with Rebecca and Charlie, because as I found out about Usher syndrome when I was a teenager, when I wanted to drive, and I was taught for eye test for driving lessons, but unfortunately I could not drive due to my condition, and of course it was quite overwhelming and it was quite really difficult. But whereas my youngest brother, he found out he has Usher syndrome when he was a kid, but he doesn't know what it really was, but he's basically gradually and knew what's going to happen, but what not to expect as well.
That's a really helpful point, and sounds consistent from all of you, that actually, for those of us who have a diagnosis much earlier now with our children with genetic diagnosis, there's an opportunity then to slowly give that information in a way that feels more, helps them to normalise and to feel gradually take on board the information. That's really helpful. And it sounds like, giving access to meet people who are visually impaired, who are deaf, who have Usher syndrome, would be helpful whenever that happens. But I'd imagine for you, you don't have that opportunity very often. One of the questions has been about how important has that been, or would that be for you, to meet other people with Usher syndrome?
Do you mind if... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah. So I think it's quite hard for me because my whole family, in fact, I have mum and dad both come from a family of 4 children, and in fact, none of my cousins even have glasses. And I think just being the only one that has glasses and has been deaf, and then I mean, I have had driving lessons so far because I've been very fortunate with my sight with this mutation. But so it looks like I may be able to drive, and I may be able to do the things that I want to do, and then live my life sort of like that. Yeah.
I just want to say that I remember I went to a Germany conference in Berlin, and it was this amazing, incredible experience because I've never ever met anyone who has Usher syndrome before. And I was only 21 or 22 at that time. But when I went to the conference, it was this incredible moment that to meet someone who was same age as you, who went through the same experience, and you're able to share with your experience and just have a deep conversation. You really enjoyed to hear from the experiences, but it's amazing.
Brilliant.
Do you mind?
Yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
So it's just one last thing, because originally I sort of met one of the first people I sort of met when with Usher syndrome was this triathlete, and he's from my area, but he was like very high up during Britain, like Ushers and Deaf triathlons and stuff like that, and it was very fun because me and him met up for a day. I watched him do a triathlon race, which was very fun. And then he sort of came and watched me do a triathlon, and then we sort of shared experiences. And that was because I think he had the same type, and he was 60 or something now. So he had a lot of advice and then had a lot of experiences to share. So then you sort of got an overview that life isn't so bad with Usher syndrome.
Brilliant. And I think that's a fantastic point to close on, and it's exactly why we do what we do, to try and enable these connections so that we can all learn from each other, and hopefully this has been really valuable to the family members that have joined this evening. I want to say a really big thank you to our panelists for sharing so openly your experiences and giving so much to our audience. It's really appreciated. We can see that from the comments and from the feedback. So thank you very much for giving your time. I'll hand over to Pam to wrap up our session, and look forward to seeing everyone next time.
Thanks, Chloe. Thanks for doing such an awesome job of facilitating, and I'll add my thanks to our panelists. It was just a pleasure to meet you guys. You enrich all of our lives. Thanks so much for your time. And we will be meeting next on February 17th. I will send up a follow-up email with this call with some links to some videos of other role models that you might want to check out, and with information for our next call. So if no one has any questions about the call, we can say goodbye, and thank you again. It's great to see all of you here today, though we didn't see your faces, but we'll do that soon. We'll have another meet and greet soon, and can't wait to meet people I have not met yet. So Happy New Year. Enjoy the rest of January.
Bye, everyone.